Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Africa and its diaspora and our friends. And welcome to the archival conversations brought to you by Trans and Intersex History Africa. My name is Victor Mukasa, and I am your host of these archival conversations that take place every Friday. Here at TIHA, our main focus is archiving, collecting, documenting, and archiving the histories and stories and legacies and memories of trans and intersex people in Africa and its diaspora. This is one of the ways that we get those histories together through the archival conversations. We have other forms like interviews, storytelling, written storytelling, in the future, even documentaries. And we keep all these collections at our website, www.transandintersexhistory.africa. Look up that website and you will find a lot about the once silenced movement of trans and intersex people in Africa. So, as usual, we are traveling somewhere in Africa, and I ask you to come journey with me. We are going to the island of Mauritius. It is a beautiful nation. It is an island. And here we're going to be exploring the history and evolution of trans activism through the lens of Collectif Arc-en-Ciel and Young Queer Alliance, two organizations that do amazing work in Mauritius. These are mainstream LGBTIQ organizations but have done a lot of work around trans and intersex human rights and issues. So help me welcome representatives from these two organizations, Collectif Arc-en-Ciel and Young Youth Alliance. They will be helping me to pronounce the other organization. I think the name is in French, but I believe that I did my best. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, and bonjour, bonsoir, ni hao. And the reason why I say that is because I believe Mauritius has all these languages running around the country.
Yes, we do.
So, welcome to the show. And we'll begin off with introductions from you. We could start with the Young Queer Alliance. If you could, those from the Young Queer Alliance, could you introduce yourselves, please?
Yes, so I will start myself. Hello, everyone. I'm Abby Domun. I work at the Young Queer Alliance as a project officer. I initially started working at the Young Queer Alliance as a social worker for the trans empowerment. My job consists of organizing activities for the trans community, trans non-binary community. And then during one session, we observed that there was one intersex participant. So we opened the door for intersex participant as well. And my job consists of sensitization of the queer community and also HIV. We also do work. We also collaborate with organizations that work closely with the queer community. We do trainings with our beneficiary. We just had our first batch of training of trainers recently, which were focused on gender diversity, sexual diversity and gender. And we also organize activities, safe space, and focus group, so as to keep our beneficiaries having something to do and to find a space to exist and to be themselves. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Abby, for that introduction. Another one from Young Queer Alliance. Briefly
All
introduce
right.
yourself.
Yeah. So, hello, I am Vraj, and I am a board member at Young Queer Alliance. So, I work full time in academia. So, I think my position is sort of bridging between research and activism. So, I'm sort of sitting on that bridge currently. So, I've been a board member since last year, but before that, I was a member, volunteer, resource person, and then eventually joined the board of executives at the institution. So my research usually focuses on queer mental health, discrimination, stigma, minority stress, a bit trying to capture that data and the experience of queer people, so LGBTQIA+, still trying to get into disaggregated data on our small island. So that is sort of the work I do. I think in terms of projects, Abby already said a lot of the things that we're doing at YQA. So it's about providing support and advice as and when needed, and also being present as well in the sessions. Yeah.
Wow, congratulations and thank you for the work that you do. And now we go to Collectif, and please start off with pronouncing for us the right way, the name of your organization.
Your pronunciation is pretty good. It's pretty good. It's actually the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel, which translates to the Rainbow Collective. And I am Brooklyn. It's very nice to be here. I am the communication and events coordinator at the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel. So my job consists mainly of, highlighting everything that we're doing on our platforms, highlighting queer artists, queer entrepreneurs, and mostly in terms of events. So we do a lot of awareness sessions. We try to educate people as much as we can on the experiences of queer people in Mauritius. So we are actually celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. We started on May 17th, 2005. Yay!
Congratulations.
Yay. So we are very focused on the queer community and pretty much everyone, but also the trans and intersex community. We have done a lot of campaigns and awareness sessions around about the rights of trans people in Mauritius, and just to bring more visibility towards the trans community. And even now, we're still very focused on that.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction to Brooklyn. And Brooklyn, before we go to the next person, one fun fact about Mauritius. Where is Mauritius found?
Oh, one fun fact about Mauritius. So Mauritius is found in the Indian Ocean. A lot of people don't know where it is, so I like to say it's close to Reunion Island and not very far from Australia too. So that's why people know where it's found.
Is it somewhere near
Tiny
Madagascar?
dot on the map.
It's closer to Madagascar.
Closer to Madagascar.
Yeah.
Okay. We're learning about Mauritius today. Yes, thank you. Vraj, one more thing about Mauritius. How we know where Mauritius is.
Yeah, so Mauritius, now that we know it's very close to Madagascar, one thing that I find interesting about the island, in theory, we have a winter, but the winter does not really exist here. We do get cold, but it's a tropical island. For us, it's cold. For tourists, they don't find it cold at all, right?
It's summer.
Our winter is still in the 15 to 20 degrees. The lowest I think is 14. So we have a winter on paper, but we have the sun throughout the whole year. That is one fun fact about Mauritius. It's a nice place for vacation. It's a nice, always, lots of beaches as well. Yeah.
Well, people from Mauritius, what are they called?
Mauritians
all over Mauritius. We wish you a happier winter this year. Thank you very much, Vraj. And Abby, tell us about Mauritius.
Mauritius. I will just add that our flag is the only flag that has 4 strips of different colors in the world, I guess. Yeah.
4
strips of different colors.
Oh, yeah. Because like 4 different colors?
Yeah, like
most of the other flags have 3.
3 or 5, but not exactly 4.
Very interesting fact. Yes, viewers, these are activists from the island nation of Mauritius. We were just sharing those fun facts. We know where Mauritius is right now. Finally, we know their flag. I just remember the 4 colors. I don't remember which colors they were. And we also know about their weather. It's a tourist destination. And if you're queer, you will also understand why this is a destination for you during this talk. Thank you very much. So now we dive into our conversation. I got my coffee. I hope you have yours.
Yes, we do.
For beginners, we will talk. Collectif Arc-en-Ciel being the first ever organization, LGBTIQ organization in Mauritius. We will start with you. Tell us about the beginnings of Collectif Arc-en-Ciel. When was the organization founded?
All right. So the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel was founded on May 17th of 2005, which is also Ida Hobbit.
Very
So it was the perfect day to start organization. And
May 17th, 2005. Before you even continue, was there a connection to the day?
Yes, it was a connection to Ida Hobbit.
Let's
hear.
That
was the reason why it started on that day. And actually, around that time, there was not much legal protections for the queer community and very few visibility for queer people in Mauritius itself. And there was no Pride March, and we were the first organization to even start the Pride March, actually. And one of the main goals of the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel around that time was to bring some legal changes and protection for the community. We had what we called Equal Opportunity Act, which talks about how we cannot discriminate someone based on their gender or their sex or their marital status and so on. But there was nothing about your sexual orientation or your gender identity. And that was one of the things that the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel was working for towards that time. But it's important to remember that we didn't have much resources and we didn't even have funding around that time. We were just like 4 people who were trying to bring some changes in Mauritius. And with time, with a lot of visibility, because that was the main area of focus of the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel. They did a lot of media campaigns, they did a lot of interviews, and they tried to start conversations about the queer community as much as they could. And with time, that's when we started to get resources. That's when we were able to include the sexual orientation into the Equal Opportunity Act. And we kept going. We were very focused, and we're still very focused on visibility and communication. In the
Collectif Arc-en-Ciel did advocacy for the inclusion of sexual orientation in the Act?
Yes, that's when the
Which year was that?
So, if I'm not wrong, it was in 2013.
2013, the talk 2014, the Equal Opportunities Act was passed in the Parliament,
That's
that was quite some time after the conception of the organization.
So that we recognize these other people, if it is okay to mention their names, if it's not okay, that's fine, but we want to put them down in history. Who are the other key figures in the founding? Who are the key figures in the founding of Collectif Arc-en-Ciel?
All right, so we had 4 people who founded the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel. So one of them is Nathalie Germain, who's still today part of the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel. She's still on the board even after 20 years. She's the vice secretary now. We had another one called Nicolas Ritter, who founded the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel, but also founded another organization called PILS, which fights for people which creates awareness around HIV and people who live with STI in Mauritius and builds on their inclusion in the Mauritian society. And we also have Thierry de Ravel, who was the founder of the organization. And finally, we had Jean-Luc Anne, who was also the founder of the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel.
A great shout out. It's very
great
special shout out to Natalie, right?
Yes.
Did you say Nicola?
Yes.
Say Terry
Thierry, yeah.
and Jean.
Yes.
Yes, those are people that we want to remember in history as the founders of the first LGBT organization in Mauritius.
Yes.
These are people that we want to honor even in the future. And it's so amazing that another generation comes in and continues with this work. So thank you, Brooklyn, for that note about Collectif Arc-en-Ciel. Maybe when does you young queer alliance come in? Just the year?
Young Queer Alliance was founded in the year of 2014.
All right, 2014.
Yes.
So we are still not yet with Young Queer Alliance, but Collectif Brooklyn, if you could tell us around that time, you've told us there were no protections in most of Africa. Where there are no protections, we hear about very terrifying, horrifying things happening to queer Africans in different countries. When you say there were no protections around that time, what was happening to the LGBT community before 2005? First and foremost, were there safe spaces? Were people meeting? Were there arrests? If any, what kind of discriminations did you have at that point, far back in 2005, before 2005?
Well, the situation was very different because the discrimination was in so many places, but at schools where people couldn't even get jobs, and there was violence in every sense of the term. So it was verbal violence, a lot of harassment on the streets. And one of the things that the collective also talked about in around 2005, 2006 was even the police brutality that the community was facing around that time. Right. So there was a lot of violence and very few places where you could talk about it. And even at the police, it was pretty hard to go and talk about the hate crimes that you were facing because there was no legal actions taken against this type of hate crimes. Which is why it was important for the organization to lead all these media campaigns to educate people on the matter itself.
Right. And what was the situation with trans people? Was there a discourse around gender identity? Were there trans people out there on the streets, visible transgender people? Was there discourse around intersex issues?
Well, actually, we had quite a few trans activists who were already who was already doing the work even before the collective started. One person that comes to my mind, and her name is Mandel. She has done a lot for the trans community, built a lot of awareness, and really talked about how the struggles that the trans community was facing around that time. She even started one organization called Visage.
And that is after Arc-en-Ciel?
Yes, it was around that time, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
I think it was the same timeline they started. Okay. And she was at least trying to start the conversation. And with the coming of the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel and the Young Queer Alliance, that's when we started to uplift even more what she was trying to do. But even around that time, the discourse around trans people was pretty negative, and there was a lot of violence. We didn't even have numbers, but it was from what they were saying. Some of them even were willing to go forward in the media campaigns to talk about it. But the situation still remained the same for quite some time. And one thing is around 2015, the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel did one of the first campaigns where we showed trans people around Mauritius. So it was mostly a campaign to raise visibility about the LGBTQ community, but there were also pictures of trans people placed everywhere around the island, which is when we started to really dive into the trans and gender non-conforming community issues. And that's when we were able to focus more of our work on this community.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Brooklyn. And Abby, where were you when Arc-en-Ciel was beginning?
Oh,
not Brooklyn, Vraj and Abby.
Yeah.
Sorry. Where were
Where
you at that point before the forming of Arc-en-Ciel, Collectif Arc-en-Ciel? Like,
Oh, in school.
I
you were in
I
school,
was
and how were things for you as people who were you already identifying as queer? Were you known to be queer?
mm,
How was that situation for you that Brooklyn just described for Mauritians?
so around 2005. I was in a school, primary school. I didn't know that I was trans, but it did reflect in my behavior that I was a feminine person. And I did get some comment, but also some bullying at the school. And I didn't understand why I was being bullied and why this was a wrong thing to be to express differently. And
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, and did you hear about Ancasia while you were in school?
no,
No.
I was there was like at this point of time there was less communication. Like there was internet was not that
Oh,
popular
said
for
you were in
me.
primary school.
Yes.
Poor thing. You would not have about Ancasia. Well, Avraj, where were you,
Yes,
and when
for
do you
me,
start hearing about this organization?
yeah. Yeah, for me, like 2005, still again, same primary school,
Mhm.
right? I think one thing I just wanted to add on to what Brooklyn said about the struggle before,
Yes.
or the experience of trans people before 2005, right? Before the establishment of the first NGO, Collectif Arc-en-Ciel.
Yes.
Trans people always existed. Trans people were always here. They were not as visible, yes, but their struggles were real and valid.
Mhm.
And when after speaking to Mandel myself, from the stories we've heard from Mandel and her friends, I think Mandel is a name that we really cherish as one of the elders in the
Yes.
community, right? So there's also Ocean as well, who was
Yeah.
already doing work as a visible trans person. So they organized parties, right? They call it Soirée Bizarre, where they were already sort of like a way for them. They were creating safe spaces for each other where they could hold space. So there was already this. It's not as documented. That's why I'm like should bring it up here so that we have this
Yes.
aspect
We will
also
Yeah.
ask
on
for the
record. Even before the
spelling
NGOs,
of
there
Manda's
were
name.
pardon.
We will also need the spelling of Manda's name. Studio, if you could get the spelling of Manda's name, because that would be
Yes,
a great story for our future
yeah.
generations to hear.
Mandel was
How did
here, Ocean was here, and they would be organizing. The trans community, we would be organizing parties where it's trans inclusive, for trans people, where they get to dress up,
Yeah.
show up, party, enjoy, and of course they had their own language that they
yes.
developed for these
Wow.
events as well, right? And how to signal each other where money was needed, when they needed to
Yes.
flee, because there was a lot of unrest. It was not safe to be visible out there. So they developed their own language around how to signal if there was police coming,
Yeah.
how to signal if someone got caught, these kind of things. So these are things that existed before the organizations were set and before we got like started how do I say formalizing the movement? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Right.
organizing for the movement. Yeah.
Wow. And when do you first hear about Ancasia?
When
Which
did I first hear about Arc-en-Ciel? I think that would be, I've heard very briefly about the existence of Collectif Arc-en-Ciel by the end of my secondary school years. I think part of that is because that was when I started to be more present on social media,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, but actually getting in touch and knowing about their work, that happened during my university years.
Right.
Yeah.
And Ancasia was already working at the university, like reaching out, outreach.
No, I
No.
was not. I while at university, so I did my studies abroad. And I wanted to know more about what was happening in terms of the LGBT movement in Mauritius. So I started looking up online on the internet, and then I came across the page of Collectif Arc-en-Ciel. I came across YQA as well this way, and saw the work that they were doing and started following what they were doing from this, so that when I come back, I could jump
and you're right. You are right there now. Back to Brooklyn. I'm sorry, because we are still in those very early years. What was the actual spark that what was the actual spark that got Natalie, Nicola, Thierry, and Jean to start this organization? Was there an event, an action that happened that they're like, no, enough is enough, we're going for this?
Well, actually, they were a group of friends, and from what they say, Nicola was able to go to the, pronounce it right, Mardi Gras in Cape Town, which is a very, very queer event that happened. And when he came back to Mauritius, he sat down with the other founder, Thierry de Ravel, and they found out that there was pretty much nothing that was being done for the community. So they built a small group of people, and they decided to start this organization. So in the beginning, it was just the four of them, and it was pretty hard for them to even find people who would be willing to be in the organization. They had more allies than queer people around that time. For a big part of the beginning years, at least, they had more allies than queer people, and they did pretty much everything themselves. They started to do the media campaigns, and they started to do the first Pride March in Mauritius, which happened, I think, a year later. So in 2006 was the first Pride March that happened in Mauritius, and we just celebrated our 19th and 21.
Right. Yeah, we will honor these people, forever. And thank you for sharing that. But just to jump ahead a little bit before we come back, Abby and Vraj, what is Young Queer Alliance? When is Young Queer Alliance started? And any connections with Arc-en-Ciel, Collectif Arc-en-Ciel? What were the reasons behind it, given that there was already an organization in existence?
So just a little bit of information on Young Queer Alliance and the founders. We have the founders still part of the board right now, right? So we have celebrated our 11th year right now. How did it start? So Collectif Arc-en-Ciel was looking broadly at the LGBTQIA plus community, respective of age, and what really sparked the conceptualization, let's put it this way, the idea of like having a different organization, and I think it's in our name. We wanted to have a space for young people in the community.
Young people love their things.
That. So one of the founders were a member at Collectif Arc-en-Ciel, and the idea came from there to maybe create another organization that would focus on the needs and the thoughts and the debates and the type of discourse that young people wanted to have around human rights, around queer rights, around their needs, right? So then, that was Najib Buks, right? So Najib Buks. And then, so he found other young activists, young queer activists around that time. So there was Yogan Sukamanyan, there was Vipin Obilak, right, who are still in the board currently. So they decided to create Young Queer Alliance. Now, it was not as straightforward in the sense that in February, they went to the registrar to get the organization registered, and they were met with discrimination there, right?
Because that is February of which year?
That was in February 2014.
Okay.
Right, so they went to try to get it registered, and there was some discriminatory behaviors happening at the office. So they had to lodge a case to the Equal Opportunities Commission. And then from there, it took 6 months, right? So in 1st of September, then they were able to get the organization registered. Yeah. 2014
is when they registered.
Yeah, 1st September 2014, if I remember the exact date. It's in so they tried to get it registered. They started it in February. There were some issues with the registry. It was discriminatory, but they were trying to cover it up, like for another reason or not, that couldn't be registered. The equal opportunities got involved, and then we were able to register.
Very interesting. And thanks to Collectif Arc-en-Ciel for the fight in 2013 for the Equal Opportunities Act. Abby, when you say young people, what do you mean young people in Mauritius? And what kind of services were you or do you bring to young people in Mauritius?
I just want to add that initially we started Young Alliance to focus more on young people, but then we also do include people of different ages. So now it's not.
Now it's not just young people. It started
now
with
it's not just.
Yeah. That was
so if I came to Mauritius now at my age, which
yes, you are included.
Everyone. Now it's open. Yeah, it started just that was the initial spark for the creation.
That's a good thing because older people then can start feeling young.
We're all young.
You're right. What kind of services? And when you say young, are you looking at you're young, like the members of these organizations are between what is the least age, the lowest age that members can be?
Lowest age, I will say 16.
Okay.
Some people are 16, but 16.
Okay.
And 16 to any age.
To 80, like us. Yeah, thank you very much for that. But again, going back to the to Collectif Arc-en-Ciel, 2013, when you do the advocacy around addition of queer people protections in the Act, the Queer Opportunities Act. This is long ago, and it is about queer people. How did Mauritians receive that, and how was that advocacy met by the policymakers and the lawmakers?
Well, I mean, around that time, it was still such a very new topic to bring forward. Like, queer people have always existed, but to talk about it publicly and on the media, that's when it sparked a lot of conversations in the Mauritian country. And actually, we did get a lot of negative conversations around it, and people who were pretty known to were talking about it in the press in a negative way, about how it's not necessarily something that is needed in Mauritius. So, want to add something?
Yeah, I want to add a bit about the political context that was happening at the time, because I like reading about it. Right. So what was happening? So it didn't came out of nowhere, right? There was the members of the opposition during the political climate at the time. There was a question that was raised by Paul Béranger, right? So who was Béranger was a politician.
Who's a pretty active politician in Mauritius.
Yeah, a very pretty active politician, where it was raised in the parliament, a question concerning the human rights and protection for LGBT people, right? So that was raised as a question, and it started creating discourse. So we had around that time so this was around the time, I think it was 2012, 2013. I was still a kid, right? I was still in school. I didn't know. I learned about it through our founder, who was already started getting into the activism sphere at that time, right? So he would be writing in the journals and sharing his voice around social issues, not just for queer rights, but in general around that time. So what he said, like that, what I learned from him was that there was sort of an interest in queer rights, right? In human rights, but also for queer people. There was that slight acknowledgement that we existed. So we were still operating from the fact that, queer people exist. And when it came to the Equal Opportunities Act, like Collectif Arc-en-Ciel, definitely, there was cooperation with civil service societies. And the founder of Young Queer Alliance was also involved as in those conversations as an activist.
Okay.
And it happened sort of behind the scenes. So when it comes to the inclusion of sexual orientation at the level of legislators, let's put it this way, policymakers, there was like conversations that happened, but based on what I know, there was not a lot of active resistance to put it into the Equal Opportunities Commission, into the Equal Opportunities Act. It was just something that needed to be added, and they recognized that it needed to be added to avoid discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, so it was added. One thing, though, is that at that time they just added sexual orientation, not
gender identity. Yeah.
The struggle continues.
It continues.
Luta continua. But yeah, that was a very good. I'm glad that you came in to give more insight on that. And we're seeing, like, I would like to understand, and also for the viewers and the future generations to understand. When I was reading about Mauritius, this is for the three of you, whoever will come in, I saw that Mauritius does not have indigenous people. Like, everybody people just came to Mauritius. It was uninhabited at some point. And so you have people of all races, right? And so the question is, has this shaped how people talk about sexual orientation and gender identity? Because you start in 2005 with official organizing, and by a certain date, so soon, you added to the Equal Opportunities Act. You have a first pride in Mauritius in the same decade. You have decriminalization, which we are going to talk about. What has made that different from the rest of the African nations? Like, what is that has shaped how fast? Of course, there's hard work from all of you, but many times we work hard in our countries, but the people we are giving the information do not even want to engage. How did Collectif Arc-en-Ciel and Young Queer Alliance deal with the communities, with the legal fraternity, with policymakers, with politicians in this country?
Well, I think from my perception for the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel, and we did a documentary actually this year on the beginning of the organization, and what has helped to at least start the narrative around the community was the visibility part. It was to show that queer people are actually human beings too, that we are going through these type of struggles, and explaining exactly why we need this legal protection and why we need people to accept us as human beings. And that was the biggest part to be done in the first few years. We couldn't have attacked the Equal Opportunity Act or the decriminalization or anything before we had enough visibility around the queer community and showing that we exist in Mauritius, because queer people have always existed. And we have mentioned like Ocean and Mande, but there's so many more people who were here before. And it was important to put these stories forward and to challenge really the beliefs that we have around the queer community.
Mauritius is said to have a population of about 1.3 million,
Yeah.
and it is a small country, small island. Does that contribute to how easy does it make easier sensitization and reaching everyone? Does that affect
Yeah.
the advocacy, the work in any way?
Yeah, I think for that, like, I think if we look at the history of Mauritius, it might seem easy, right? But we need to acknowledge that even though we don't have an indigenous population, we have descendants of slaves, we have descendants of indentured laborer who make up the majority of the country. So there is a history of violence, there is a history of persecution, there is a history. We were a Dutch colony for a bit, and then we became a French colony, and then we became a British colony. So there is that history of, we are still what I call it a post-colonial like age happening in the country. Because if we look at the sodomy law itself, right, section 250, it was a residual law that came from, it was something that was introduced by the British that remained in our law even when we got independence. And this is not just the case of Mauritius, it was similar in India, it's similar in many other countries, right? So we were a country that was, we had settlers coming in, they brought in slaves, and then there was the abolition of slavery, they brought in indentured laborers who were not living in the best conditions. And then, so there is that history of disparities in terms of economies, in terms of rights, let's put it this way. And there is also the diversity of religion, which I think can be a good thing, but also a bad thing in our case, right? When you ask why was it sort of easy, so let's say easy, but like how can we it's not easy, not easy, but like there is the idea that we have different religions, so we need to be able to live, to coexist in a peaceful manner, right? So that sort of, I think it helps to,
actually, the question was that why did success come very fast?
That was, so I think it relates a bit with the fact that we are a multi-ethnic island, multi-religious, right? So we have this duty to sort of listen to different groups, to people who are different, who do not, have different beliefs than us. I think this is something very Mauritian, right? We live in harmony already when it comes to religious practices. So that makes it sort of opens the door to some conversations about diversity. On the other hand, though, the negative talk also, so there is religious persecution of queer people in the country, right? So it can be helpful, but it can also be used in discourse against. Where does this value come from? I think it is something that we as a community, we as a society in Mauritius still are working a lot on sort of unpacking that kind of what we have sort of imported from other countries, right? And what is us, what defines us as a nation, as Mauritius. So there is still a lot of discourse trying to unpack these things that were imported from, not just like from those who were colonizing, so not just from the West, but also from what came from India, what came from Africa. So it's still was ongoing conversation.
Very interesting. That's why I told you that Mauritius is has a very interesting story. Abby,
I think that just one thing to add, like if I know we're going to talk about 250, like the decriminalization case, but one thing that the judges quote is that the social fabric of Mauritius is fragile because of all these diversities that already exist. So that I think really encapsulates Mauritius, the Mauritian society. Fragile social fabric. It's used for and against, but it's not because there is diversity of ethnicities and religion.
We want to hear more about that angle when we talk about this. So that brings us again to you, Abby, and this is about decriminalization. Young
queer allies.
Was Young Queer Alliance involved in this advocacy to decriminalization? And how did you engage? What is your account of that entire process? And we can hear from both people from Young Queer Alliance, if you can, before we get back to Collectif Arc-en-Ciel.
So I do know that there was 4 plaintiffs that made a complaint at the Supreme Court of Mauritius.
Which year was this?
In
2019.
2019. Thank you, Vraj. Yes. So there was our founder, Najib Fokiabox.
Najib, yes.
Our founders,
founders, Najib Fokiabox, Yugen Subramanian, Vipin Nabilak, and also a member, Imesh Fali, who made the complaint. And I will just let Vraj to continue.
I think I've been trying to document that myself for the organization. I think that's why the work did not start in 2019. I think I should start with that. The work started in 2014. A bit more. They started like YQA. When it was founded itself, that's when the conversation started about decriminalizing same-sex relationship, right?
About the conversation was initiated by Young Queer Alliance.
It was something that was already happening in Collectif Arc-en-Ciel, right? So there was already conversations.
It makes sense because Najib of YQA was with Collectif Arc-en-Ciel.
Yeah.
Makes
so
sense.
There is that. So conversations were already happening at Collectif Arc-en-Ciel in the early, I think 2010, 2011. And then when YQA was founded, that was also one of the priorities that they wanted to tackle, right? Equal human rights, to promote a safe and inclusive society for queer people. That is one of our mission and vision of the organization. So what happened essentially, I can talk about the case that YQA put and a little bit about the work that went into it. So 2014, the Young Queer Alliance was founded, but at the same time, there was a lot of information gathering, right? So what essentially Najib did, and Yogan as well, and Vipin, so the founders, they started interacting with regional countries. So they went to, I think, Durban. They started interacting with regional activists to see how decriminalization, what was the conversation around decriminalization and even marriage equality, right? So as they started engaging more, they realized the importance of documentation, right? So legal documentation, the legal research that comes to it. So there was already some groundwork that they started doing to get the documents ready before lodging the case in 2019. So during that year, there was a lot of they did not at first. Going to court was actually Plan B. Plan A was to go through parliamentary procedures to see if there could be an amendment done, but there was not a lot of willingness from the government to engage to bring the change on their side. So they had to go to court. So that was when they started talking with politicians, when they started talking with stakeholders. It's not a question of the stakeholders and the politicians themselves being against it. It's more of the fear of backlash of losing voters. Right? So there was that tension, which then brought it to Plan B, which was to go to courts. But there was already certain documentation work that was already being done with one of the lawyers, right? So socio-economic conditions of queer people. So there was a study that the commission and did legal analysis studies just to prepare the documents, and then they lodged the court in 2019. So there's a lot of these networking, documentation that led, and just to take a more informed approach, and also trying to think of what is the risk assessment, of going to court, what would happen if they lost the case at the Supreme Court, what to do next, all these things happen. And then they lodged the court in September 2019. So that was a bit on how it went.
And the success came and the victory came in 2023.
2023, 4th of October 2023. I know that day.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Brooklyn, before decriminalization, are there laws that targeted trans people in particular? And with decriminalization, legally things got better?
Well, if we're talking about trans people, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we necessarily have laws that target them, but they're usually excluded from protections of the laws. Today, we barely have any protections against hate crime in Mauritius. And while we may have the Workers' Rights Act that includes about sexual orientation and the queer community, the discrimination that trans people face at work is still very present. It's still quite hard as a trans person to get a job. And actually, most trans people, they will either work at NGOs, or a lot of them will also
behind the desk, where it's not frontline, whether it's not client, whether they don't interact with clients.
You won't be at the front line if you're a trans person. In most cases, actually, but not in every case. So we cannot generalize it either. And we also have quite a few trans people who have to resort to sex work to be able to get money. So while with the decriminalization of the Section 250 was a very big step forward, and after lots of years, I do think that there's still a lot of work to be done, because we were able to decriminalize a part of it, and now there's even more to be done. And this will start by the legal gender recognition of trans people. So, which is something that we are currently working on, the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel.
There is no recognition yet for that.
Yes, they're not. So we don't have the gender market change yet.
Right.
Which is what we are currently starting to work on at the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel. Through a project that we have with the foundation, and it's it's still a big thing to be done.
I mean, I would say that's arguable, but that's
arguable. But
I feel like it's very like the procedures are clear. The procedures are here. It's just like people are not signing the documents that needed to be signed.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We have a way for legal gender recognition. There is a lot. I think the barrier is administrative to a certain level.
It is, yeah. But I think I would also add that the barrier is also about the reaction that we get from the people.
Because the social conversation, like the conversations that it raises the question: the society ready for these changes? I think that there is a lot of social awareness to be raised even now. But I think, if I might, do you have anything more to say? Just to bounce off on what Brooklyn was saying, I think your question was like, are there laws that target trans people? I feel like it's more of a case of invisibility and exclusion in how laws are interpreted. And with the Section 250, with the case that went to court, we have seen in the judgment, especially for the way that the laws are interpreted, one of the things that came out was that sex could be interpreted inclusive of sexual orientation. The fact that the judges came with that, it opens, like, the words that we already have. It sort of opens that, certain terms in laws can be interpreted in different manner. So this definitely, I think it's a momentum that we can pick on in terms of just legal changes. When I was talking about the administrative barriers, we have our Civil Status Act, right? We have our Civil Status Act that sort of dictates how documentation and records are kept in national identity card, birth certificates, marriage certificates, like death certificates and everything. And we already have the procedures set based on this, on how to make amendments to these things, right? It's just that they won't do it for trans people, because their argument is that they make amendments only if there was error at the time of the record input. right? So that was one of the administrative barriers. They don't want to set the precedence of making a change, on a gender marker in any of the official documentations, which is now causing harm for trans people, because they can't access that change in legal gender marker. So we have already instruments in our law that we could potentially use instead of bringing new laws and new things that we could use in a more effective way. It's just that there is a lack of motivation or, like, let's say, legal advocacy and activism on. So because maybe this raises the question: what is society ready for these kind of changes? We don't. There is that part. So yeah,
so we do have to say that we have done some work towards it. Just last year, with the Young Queer Alliance, the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel, and our partner Gender Links, we did a full comparative analysis research on the legal gender recognition and how it has happened in other countries that have similar legal system on Mauritius. So we are pretty much backed up. We have a lot of people in the community themselves who feel ready for that change. We have the research. We have, like Vraj explained, even the openings for this to happen. It's just now putting everything together and actually doing the most for it to happen.
Right. I like the collaboration there and the solidarity among you guys and how you work together on these issues affecting everybody. Abby, I wanted to ask, you mentioned about 4 people that that filed this case.
Yes.
Are any of them trans identifying?
No, they were gay men, mostly.
All right. But yes, they fought for everyone, including us people. And also, I wanted to ask you, Abby, since you're working with the youth, how easy is it for the youth that are ready for HRT to access, hormone replacement therapy and other affirming procedures?
Okay. So in Mauritius, in the public hospital, we do have HRT, which is accessible and free.
Free?
Yes, it is free in the public hospital.
Like Mauritius in Africa?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
But there's still some lack of treatment. Like for if someone is going for transition from M to F, they will receive only blockers in the public sector, only blockers, and they will need to find estrogen in the private pharmacy, which is quite difficult right now because it is going out of stock. Because so, and also for people who want to transition from F to M, they do they do get their T shot in the hospital, but it is not the required amount that they should be injected. So, and I have also received some beneficiaries who are not having this service in the hospital. I don't know if it is a permanent issue or just a temporary issue. So yes, it is. This is how medical transition HRT is in Mauritius.
All this is government supported?
I will say yes, but there is no official protocol for this.
I think there's a lot of issues with the HRT treatment. While it may be free, first of all, it has been here for quite a few years now, and a lot of people in the hospital themselves don't know that this service is available, and they may redirect you to other doctors. And actually, the doctors that handle the HRT, they're not thoroughly educated on the matter. They don't necessarily have a training on how HRT works, on the amount that they need to give to the trans community. And we also talking about a lack of stock for estrogen, but it's also because there's a double market lately for women who are going through menopause. So they're also prescribed estrogen, just like trans people. And since we have much more trans people who are taking this HRT now, it's getting pretty hard for them to access to it. So they have to either order their HRT from other countries, which might cost them a lot, or what happens sadly in Mauritius is that a lot of trans people, they self-medicate and they just take anything that they get that they hear might work for the transition, and sometimes it has a lot of effects on their health, and the long-term effects can be quite damaging. So while the HRT is still here, there is still a lot of lack of information, not only in the hospital, but within the trans community itself. And this is something that we really need to work on.
Yes.
I think that queer Africans should travel to Mauritius and join hands with all of you to make a rainbow nation there. Because do you have you had other Africans coming into Mauritius to trans people just to have access to services?
Well, actually, we do
I
have
will,
queer people who come to Mauritius, but there's a lot of queer people who come here to seek for asylum. But we don't offer asylum on the basis of sexual orientation or gender
Oh, they come to
identity.
seek asylum,
They come to seek asylum,
but
and
Mauritius will not take that.
yeah, under this basis, we don't take them for asylum. So we work with other organizations to see how we can help them or redirect them to other countries. But we do have a lot of, actually, I would say we have a lot of people out of who's not Mauritian who are queer who come to our organization and try to come, because we offer a lot of services, not only for HRT, we have
Yeah.
a lot of events of focus groups of research and awareness sessions
Psychological
of
support.
counseling. At the Collectif Arc-en-Ciel, we do offer a service of counseling every week,
Right.
which is very demanded, and we have a lot of people who come here, Mauritian and non-Mauritian. So I wouldn't say it's only for HRTs, but it's pretty much for all the services that we offer.
Yes.
Just to add on to the HRT
Yes.
treatment, I feel like the government like approved for this, but without coming up with clear procedures and protocols and training. So there is definitely a lack of training on and understanding of what is really gender affirming care. So to the point where like even nurses who work in these hospitals, like they are not aware. A lot of Mauritians themselves and are not aware that these services are available, and so there is very much a lack of training on how this goes. So even for us, it's a bit sort of through how to really navigate through the process, because we go and seek for information, they themselves they don't give clear answers. So
Yeah.
it has that there is definitely a need for a more structured approach. And safeguarding and safety training, all of that when it comes to the administration of HRT.
Mauritius is. I'm learning a
And you
lot.
might ask now, Victor, I think for me, what is like an interesting thought to hold is we provide certain forms of HRT, but legal gender recognition is still not happening yet.
That's
So in a way, you acknowledge trans
that's
people
very
exist.
crazy.
Another way.
But I think that there's hope. There's hope, and at some point, the government of Mauritius will have to see people through this process, because you can't provide what you're not going to monitor officially, for the protection of the lives of Mauritians. But you're doing amazing work, and I think that Africa should hear more about the story of Mauritius for so many reasons. And don't be surprised when you are approached by other entities just for the story to go further. But here at Trans and Intersex History Africa, we will definitely share this story, and probably more from Mauritius, because I want to hear more about Mando. Is it Manda?
Mandel, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to hear more about all these people, because that is the wealth that we have as queer Africa. that is all wealth. Those stories are wealth for us. They are energy for us. They are fire for us. They are encouragement for us. And I'm so glad that you were able to actually recognize the contribution of these individuals to what you have in Mauritius today. The first Pride on the Indian Ocean took place in Mauritius. That is going to be our closing story and how this happened for today, because we are likely to ask Mauritians back for more of these very interesting stories. But how did the first Pride happen? When did it happen? I think it was 2005.
2005, 2005, it was
2005. How was it organized? How did Mauritians, the general community, receive queer people marching on the streets?
Oh, so from the conversation I had with the founders, around the time the feedback was not that well, and they were a bit scared that queer people would not show up because it was just such a stigmatized issue to just be out and loud about your identity. And I do know that even in terms of the administrative stuff, it was quite complex to organize the first Pride March because you also need to have a lot of security and the police to be aware. But they were a very small team and they were able to make it happen in the center Mauritius around Rosil, which is where we still do our Pride March today. And they had quite a few people that came. And actually the first few Pride marches were the ones where there were the most people when you look back at it. And that's when they kept going and going, and now we still doing the Pride March, getting bigger and bigger every year, and we're trying to include the community more and more in the organization. We're trying to put that on the front line even more. This year itself, we had a lot of queer entrepreneurs themselves who came to sell their products. So we're trying to create the more visibility possible around the queer community, and also to put forward trans people and people who are gender non-conforming because they deserve to be at the forefront, and because they are the ones who are most visibly queer and who has, as we all know, trans people have always been at the forefront of the LGBTQIA plus advocacy.
Yeah.
Gracious. That's a very big point, because we have pride in the world in places where trans people are still fighting to have trans pride, and knowing that it is because of trans people that we even have pride.
Yeah.
And it is very interesting to hear that Mauritius had it the first time. They at Mauritius, I think that we should all study Mauritius and the journey to where you are, and how you have challenges, a lot of them, but your success story is really a good story and can be a great lesson to all of us from the rest of Africa. There's a lot for us to learn from the story of Mauritius. So happy Pride 2025. I don't know if it happened already to Mauritians, but as we close, I would like to have each one of you send a message to Queer Africa. Abby, if you could just send a brief message of encouragement or whatever you choose to young trans people in Africa today. Vraj, I will request you very briefly to talk about the road to decriminalization in Mauritius. That victory. Let people know that it happened, when it happened, briefly how it happened, and how important it is. And encourage the rest of Africa to fight, to not give up until we all get to decriminalization. And Brooklyn, Collectif Arc-en-Ciel is a mainstream LGBT organization, LGBTIQ, the entire alphabet. And yet, the organization has done well in uplifting transgender and intersex people. I think that is very, very important. We have groups in Africa that have called themselves LGBT, and the T is just a decoration. Speak to that and encourage organizations around that issue and how important it is. Studio, as each of these people speak and send a message to the world, please have them on the screen by themselves. Thank you so much. Abby, let's go.
Yes, my message. So is it good?
Hold on, Abby. Hold on, Abby.
Good. Yeah. So my message for our trans sisters, brothers, siblings from Africa, I just want you to know that you're beautiful and that our voice is powerful. We have existed since forever and we will continue to exist. And we are very diverse as our cultures, as our different African countries, so stronger together. Thank you.
Yes. So for me, just briefly about the process of decriminalization, I think I want to start with reminding everyone, our queer African people, the law is here to protect you. The law is here to protect your rights. You have rights, you have fundamental rights, you have human rights. And it starts from here, from knowing your rights and knowing, what you're protected about, right? So having that dignity to live as a human being, this is very important, because if we tell ourselves, we adopt this attitude of, of that we are helpless, we can't change anything, it makes it harder for us to move towards decriminalization. So definitely there is hope. There is always hope. If the law is not working as it should, we can fix it. We can come together and try to fix it, and it should not be a one person's struggle. It comes with us coming together, working together, finding the resources, finding allies, finding, really amplifying our voice, so that we can bring these changes. And it's not going to be something that happens overnight, right? So it's a process, and it's important that everyone is involved, what is keep themselves updated to know what is happening. So please start with knowing your laws, start with knowing your rights, and then from there you'll know how to challenge and reclaim colonial, colonial remains or laws that are not, working, and challenging the system essentially. Yeah, thank you.
So my message to queer people in Africa, the first thing I want to say is remember that you are valid, you have the right to live, you have the right to exist, you have the right to the same opportunities that everybody else, and always remember to be yourself and never hide yourself for the comfort of other people. Always remember that you have the power to change things. You have the power to bring change, to make queer people be known around the country, and just be loud, just be you, and always be fun. And remember that there are people who are here who are fighting for you, and fighting for your rights, and just for your right to live as a human being.
Another segment of the archival conversations on trans and intersex history Africa. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your stories, and your truth, and for representing parts of the stories out of Mauritius around trans rising in on that small and beautiful island. Mauritius has a very unique and inspiring chapter in intersex and trans history in Africa, but also generally queer history in Africa. And we at Trans and Intersex History in Africa will do our best to share this story with people so that they can get bits of that inspiration that we all need for our struggles to continue. A special thank you to our donors who support this work, Australia Lesbian Foundation and the other foundation. Thank you so much for making this work possible. Thank you very much to Gender Dynamics for the support that you give us. Good day, good evening, good afternoon, good year to everybody in Mauritius. And until next time, with yet another conversation by Trans and Intersex History in Africa, au revoir. We'll be here next Friday with another segment. Thank you.